The coronavirus pandemic has wreaked havoc on the world, folks, and the loss of life has certainly been horrific. What it has done to our countries and the world's economies has been disastrous, but always looking for the good in all obstacles we face. And with all the lockdowns and with millions around the globe forced to work from home, we're now realizing that there are a lot of benefits to actually doing home work. And no one is more of an expert on that than my guest, Carrie DePhillips. She is the CEO of the Content Factory. Her company is a digital PR agency that specializes in SEO and social media marketing and is rated one of the top agencies in the world. And she was also recently named one of the top 3 women in the industry. And what is really unique about her company is that her entire staff works from home or wherever they may be, wherever there's Wi-Fi. And she also is the host of a podcast called The Workationing podcast, which we will discuss at length. Carrie, welcome to Upside of 40. How are you?
Hi, Sean. I'm doing well. Thanks so much for having me.
Wow. You are, I guess, a world traveler for sure. Coronavirus certainly has taught us a lot about working from home. You've been taking advantage of the benefits, though, for a long time. How did this all start with you? When did you start realizing that this could be a way of life?
Um, Long story short, I when I left college, I got my start in advertising. I had a commute downtown. I had to pay like $280 a month back then for the privilege of parking downtown. I had to like spend an extra hour. Ladies, really feel me on this one. I had to spend an extra hour getting ready to do a job that I was already ready to do.
Hmm.
And when you look at, well, when I left advertising and got into freelance writing and then eventually turned that into the Content Factory in 2010, as I was starting my agency, there were some things that I had to consider. Number one, like, how do I save on one of the biggest expenses, which is overhead?
Hmm.
It's entirely possible to like eliminate it completely. So,
Yeah.
in a remote environment, from a business owner's perspective, you're able to, number one, save on the overhead, which makes you able to offer competitive pricing. Number two, I was in Pittsburgh at the time, and Pittsburgh is a fantastic city. I bleed for the black and gold,
Yeah.
but there's talent all over the world and certainly all over the country. And when
Right.
you're remote first, you're able to, from a talent perspective, go after basically anyone, anywhere. And you're not limited, and your skills, your agency skills and talent aren't limited to your geographic location.
Right.
Furthermore, going back to that commute, I tallied it all up, and my team, on average, or just people on average, save 500 hours a year
Wow.
working from home. And think about it, like getting ready,
Yeah.
finding your keys, like the whole routine and rigmarole, right? Um, it adds up to 500 hours a year. I'm able to give myself that 500 hours back, but then also everyone on my team has that 500 hours.
Yeah.
One of my PR representatives is incredibly talented. He came from Cleopatra Records, and he manages some major accounts. His pedigree is just impeccable. Problem is with this guy, he is a touring musician sometimes. He's a
Hmm.
legitimate rock star.
Hmm.
And not COVID obviously put a damper on that, but he was able to have a job and then also like again, not just fulfill his rock star fantasies, because he did that way before I ever entered into the picture,
Yeah.
but he was able to have the best of both worlds. I have mothers on my team who, long before COVID hit, they got to save on childcare. They got to see their kids' first steps. Those moments that if you strategically engineer your life in a way where, for me, that translated to working from home and then working from ever. But if you set the foundational pieces into place, you can really have whatever kind of life you want and
Yeah.
maximize the time that you're able to spend pursuing your passion projects and enjoying time with your family and, squeezing every bit of everything out of life.
Yeah, it really is amazing. I'm just doing the math in my head. You're talking almost 20 days
Yeah.
of hours. I mean, that you can have back. And this isn't like we haven't had this technology existing before the coronavirus pandemic. I think it's made companies certainly a lot more aware of what they can do to use and utilize these different techniques for it. But and some companies did allow many of their employees to work maybe partially from home. But why
Mhm.
do you think companies really have been so resistant to it, prior to this?
Well, it presents a lot of challenges. And as a business owner I had no formal business experience. I grew up on a farm and I started my company with $500. Like
Wow.
really from the
Yeah.
ground up for here. And so I really didn't know what I was doing. And so without a formal playbook, I was able to kind of create my own in a way that turned out to be fantastic for me. But if you don't have that foundation set up, communication is a problem. Specifically, and this is not really talked about a lot, but when you're remote, essentially, let's say 80% of your communication is done via text, except for tone of voice doesn't get carried over via text.
Right.
And so sometimes a short Slack message that isn't meant to be offensive comes across
Right.
in a much more harsh way than was intended. And that's across the board. There are all kinds of misunderstandings. When explaining this to my staff, because it's something that we cover extensively, because it's something that we have to be aware of and then actively guard against, try to write out a step-by-step for tying your shoe.
Yeah.
It's really hard to do that,
Yeah. Yeah.
you know?
Yeah.
And it seems so intuitive. You just like make the loop around your finger and they're like, well, what finger? Right. And so the same is true for creating workflow documents. How do you tell somebody to tie your shoe when it's about sending a press release or whatever it is that's going on at your company? And the strength of your scope of work and your workflow documents are how fail proof, because people will find new and exciting ways to disappoint you and make mistakes.
Right.
and,
Yeah.
and use each of those is a learning opportunity, because that's technically the way that I view it. That's not their fault. That's my fault because it wasn't written down in the workflow document.
Right.
And I listened to your previous episode. I can't remember the gentleman's name, but he was a financial planner, and he
Right.
talked a lot about this too.
Yeah.
In order to get away from your work, and the difference between he and I is that I traveled with my work, and I continue to travel with my work, whereas he took a year off entirely and stepped back. But regardless, whether you're in my position or his or in another one as a business owner, having those workflow documents is critical to ensuring the success of your company when you're not willing or able to breathe down somebody's neck and correct every mistake that they make.
Right. But in some ways, I would think that having that freedom, though, you could be even more productive. And I think probably the initial response to all this, when it was being, I guess, experimented with, was, they're going to be home. They're not going to be as productive. They're going to be, running off with the kids somewhere or doing whatever. But have they found that it is actually more efficient? I don't know cite any studies, but from your perspective, are we?
Yes, if you Google digital nomad statistics, I think a blog post that I wrote comes up I think it's in the top 3. Search engine optimization is my area of expertise, right, and also a highly remote industry. But statistically, people are more productive when they're, by, I think it's a margin of 20+%, they're more productive. And if the way that I see it from people who aren't in a position or don't want to be in a position to create their own company or run their own company, if you're working from home for the first time, or if you're working from home in general, remote work is an excellent opportunity. I think it's an unparalleled opportunity to prove your worth, demonstrate your expertise, and show your value to the company in a way that you can be compensated for in the form of a raise, promotion, both, whatever, right? You can kind of write your own ticket, but then you have to be very, I like to say that remote work is the great equalizer. And I know that a lot of your listeners are male, a lot of my audience are female. I created the world's largest network of women in my industry. It's called Sisters in SEO. Workationing has a pretty large female audience. But so when I talk about it from, usually I talk about it from a female perspective, but gender neutral, it works the same.
Yeah, I was going to say, are men and women equally as productive, have they found, or are women?
What I tell ladies is that remote work removes a whole lot of the like barriers or like what adds up to the glass ceiling. For example, who cares what you look like as long as you get the job done? What's the quality of that work look like? What are the results of that work, and are you tracking that? Can you convey that to your boss and to your clients or to whoever in a way that, like, I like to say the arrows are always green and pointing upwards in the reports. And from an agency side of things, that's very true. But from an employee side of things, come time for negotiation, or like maybe that negotiation is, I want to work from home permanently so that I can travel the world, keep this job, keep my benefits, you know,
Yeah.
and like live a different type of lifestyle. In order to do that or convince your boss that that's possible, you need to demonstrate competency, and not just competency, but like, I do this better when there aren't distractions around. I do this better when I can't smell Bob's fish cooking in the microwave. I do this better when there aren't phones ringing and I can't hear Kathy cackling over at HR, right? Like, there are all of these things, these distractions, and there are different distractions when you work from home, but you're able to compensate for that by maybe adding in a few extra hours here or there. And
Well,
like,
also, what about that consistency too? You say they got to show competency, but also the fact that you're going to be able to deliver and be consistent.
yes, timeliness is huge. Like,
Yeah.
looking at hiring writers, the biggest problem I have with finding writers is, number one, talent. If you're at your company, they already believe that you have the talent. They hired you for this role. Now, how do you exceed in that position, right? A huge part of that is, can you meet deadlines? Do you even like exceed deadlines? Do you follow up with people? Following up is a huge part of remote work, because sometimes people just miss emails or they don't get around to it. And there are tools that automate that process. For example, I use Mixmax, Mixmax, which is a Chrome Gmail plugin that tracks all of my emails. And you can set it to, now Gmail has this functionality too, but you can set it to bring the email back into your inbox to follow up automatically. Mixmax has added functionality where you can see who opened your email and when. So you never have the like, oh, I never saw that email.
Yeah.
I saw that you saw the email because my widget saw that, you know? Having tools to automate the process to help you excel without occupying all of the headspace of, you know, for example, did I remember to follow up with that client? That I think that that's a big part of making sure that you're productive while working from home, efficient while working from home, because you can waste a lot of time if you don't have the right tools and processes in place to remain efficient. And then also, again, making sure that you're able to track your progress and have some sort of KPIs that you can report back to your boss in a way that shows that, like, maybe I'm doing even better than I was pre-COVID.
Yeah. Well, let's get into that a little bit about scheduling, because I think a lot of people, especially who were kind of forced into this, we're used to having, you know, I have this set schedule. I get up, I get ready, I get out the door by this time, I'm at the office, and they were forced into the situation. So although we're learning of the benefits here, but how do you set up a schedule that you can stick to? What are some tips on that for people who want to make this work, but maybe struggling with really sticking to a schedule? Do you do it like it's a regular office day, take a lunch, how is the best way to schedule?
I mean, it depends on the person. I manage and employ a very diverse team of individuals. For me, for example, I'm in Amsterdam. Most of my team and clients are based on EST, so the East Coast. I've got some West Coasters, which means that I pull a lot of late nights. Often I'm working until 2 o'clock in the morning, but I usually never wake up before 10. But it really just depends. I like to keep it kind of footloose and fancy free because I never know when projects are going to come up that I might need to work on. I have some staffers who really legitimately work 9 to 5 from home. I totally respect that. That's fine. I just care that they hit their 40 hours. Whenever they work those hours is largely up to them. I might work more or less than that, but I'm in a slightly different position.
Yeah.
I've got different responsibilities.
You say, work their 40 hours. My philosophy has always been, you get your work done, whatever is expected of you, and however you do it, then we're good. And I think that
if I were running an actual factory, that might be true.
Yeah.
But in the context of there's never an end to the work that we do for our clients.
Right.
There's always more research to do. There's always, certainly, if they've got like an eight blog post per month package, then we write the 8 blog posts and then we're done for that client. But then there are other clients that require more attention. And then when my employees run out of that time, I also have an agency to promote, so I put them on TCF work sometimes too.
So how do you keep track of that? Do they punch in and out through their laptops, or how do you keep track of their, by how?
TOGGL, Toggle. And they're able to allocate their time to specific clients, specific tasks. Then my accountant looks at this on a monthly basis and tells me like which employees are most profitable, which clients are most profitable, that kind of thing. But yeah, Toggle makes it easy.
Yeah, it's amazing that there are so many of these tools. What about for the people? Because one thing I have heard from many people is that they miss the socialization of being around people. Some people like that office atmosphere. They have their office buddies. They go to lunch. Are we getting the same thing, or do we miss a lot when it's on a screen, even though we see each other?
No, and honestly, the people who work for me don't miss it. They don't want that. I don't want that personally. Like I'm good for a lunch about once a week.
Yeah.
I don't, and I've got a married band of largely introverts who are really great at their jobs, and we're happy to make connections and interact and provide value, but you can do that in a largely digital fashion without ever having to change out of your sweatpants.
Yeah. Well, I guess it's whatever works for a person, and that some people like that, but I guess you can make it up in other ways. I know that a lot of places will, even though we can't meet face to face, they'll do I know that like meetings that like with my group that I work for a TV station, and now they have all the morning editorial meetings online, and they're actually shorter now, and I don't know. Is it when you're in that situation, do you people tend to get to what we're here to discuss and get off? And is that a part of this efficiency?
Yeah, that's my favorite kind of meeting. Can we just have a bullet pointed agenda, run through it, and I don't care what the weather's like in Omaha right now because it doesn't matter. That's a shorter version and kind of just an indication of how little I like to have in-person meetings. But for the people who really do like in-person meetings or miss the socialization aspect, pre-COVID, there were co-working spaces, WeWork, there are others, local ones even. There are meetups. I go to meetups for entrepreneurs in my area or whatever city I happen to be in at the time. Those are usually a good time. So it just depends on how you choose to structure your socialization. And again, pre-COVID, that was really easy, and I could easily rattle off 10 options for the people who miss that work or that co-working environment, connecting with others in the workspace. You can solve that any number of ways pre-COVID. In this current situation, it's a lot more difficult. So now you're talking more Zoom meetings and hangouts that way. Hopefully this will all be over soon and things will get back to normal or a new normal, whatever that means. but these co-working facilities are a great opportunity to network with other entrepreneurs, just because it's not my cup of tea. And I recoil at the thought of, going to a networking event. Hugely beneficial to the people. Everyone I know who is a part of WeWork or has gone to such types of co-working spaces have really met other entrepreneurs or people in the space who have connections. Maybe it's not even like, oh, I met this accountant at the co-working space and now he's my accountant. It might be, I know this accountant at the co-working space and he's got this guy who cracks Facebook ads. Mm-hmm. And then now he's my Facebook ad person and I'm selling it online, right? So it could be any number of ways that you could benefit from just like traditional networking.
Yeah, well, and it certainly opens up your employee pool. I mean, you've got employees all over the world now, and it doesn't limit you to your city or your town, wherever you might be. Carrie, let's get into the basics now for people that are, setting up an office at home. And it looks like, this will be part of our future. What are the basics? I mean, of course, you can do pretty much everything from your laptop, but how do you set up, a home office? Are there better places in the home to do it? Keep it out of your bedroom. What do you recommend?
Well, so I have a set list of rules at the Content Factory for video calls for the people who work for me.
Not in the bathroom?
It's certainly not in the bathroom. If you're not wearing pants, do not stand up until the call's over.
That's number one. Okay.
Right. Exactly. Presentation is important, but also lighting is really important. Yeah. If you're sitting in bed, you're fired. That's where I'm from.
Yeah, okay. If you're propped up on pillows and your jammies, that's probably not a good thing for the boss to see.
No. Would you take that meeting with the client? Would you invite the client into your home to sit on your bed while you're talking to them? No, I don't think so. So be aware of your background. Also, different times of day. That's a problem for me, for example. So like I said, often I work until 2:00 in the morning. Sometimes I have a call, let's say at midnight, with somebody on the West Coast. Well, I can't be in a dark, dingy place. So I've got a ring light that I fire up and I turn all the lights on in my house and it looks like it's daytime and I just had my coffee. So being aware of that, also your physical appearance. If you've got kids, you can't control that. But we certainly can't control, what might go on with the toddlers and whatnot. I've got a cat who will not quit. She's got a lot of spirit in her, that one. She hasn't made an appearance so far, but usually she does, and life goes on. But there are some tools within Zoom that can limit that. So there are tools that reduce background noise, for example. So let's say your partner is in another room, also on a conference call. If you both have the noise reduction down, the people that you're talking to are not going to be able to hear them. Mm-hmm. Zoom has some really killer backgrounds. So let's say you are in bed, just can't get it together, that's fine. Flip on that background and you can look like you're in the Star Trek ship, or in The Office, the show.
Yeah. It is amazing to me, Carrie, though, you see some of these because they're all over network television now whenever they do an interview. And, I like it because, I'm a big HGTV fan. I'm always looking at what they got behind them, that's a nice couch. But I'm also amazed, just how they're not aware of things. They'll have the, 4 feet of headroom above them, or they've got, their bed behind them that's not made. Just being aware of that, because that does really, I know that has an impact. That does have an overall impression of you.
I moved those flowers over there just for you.
Yeah,
Sean.
I'm impressed. Thank you. But isn't that true though? You do have an impression, and I don't know if you do, but I'm that guy. I'm not even listening sometimes to the guys that are on TV. I'm kind of looking over their shoulders to see what these celebrities' houses look like, and God, that's awful wallpaper.
And when in doubt, if you really just don't know what to do, get a big whiteboard, post it. Yeah. Show progress,
get a sign.
What are you working on back there?
So
exactly.
got the printer place. It's just, tech
Yeah,
work.
you can have Fracture is one of my favorites.
Hmm.
Fracture.me is the website, and you can get glass photo prints for like $0, and it will have your logo on it right behind you. It's a really nice tiled out way to do that.
Yeah.
I've got some on order, which is why it's top of mind.
Yeah, but it is there are so many tools available now, and they're not real expensive. I mean, you can
No.
get a good microphone for a little more than $100. You mentioned that ring light, which is makes you look fabulous, by the way.
Yeah.
And really
Oh,
it
it's not even on. Like imagine in the
wow,
next
this is
minute it's
natural
on.
light. Oh man. But my
There
point is
was
really, all these tools we have out there, and it's not expensive, and it really does make an impression on what you look like on these, and what how you're framed, and it really is. You're not looking up somebody's nose, and it's just
right.
little things that you need to do. So I know
Well,
there's a lot out there, and
like
you probably have a lot of links to some of this stuff that people can find. I know that
sure, I
you
can
know a
hit
lot
you with
about
them
this.
after this interview's done. I'll send you an email and
Please.
you'll have some links. But just like everything in life, like whether you're starting a business or trying to take your career to the next level, or it's not
Hmm.
enough just to think about it. It's not enough
Right.
to think about getting a ring light or to get your logo in the background. Like that looks very nice
Hmm.
in the background, Sean, but you didn't just think of it, you placed that order. It's like taking the step, not just thinking about doing it.
Yeah.
You
And
gotta have a killer background.
yeah, taking this all in now, because I think that unfortunately it took a horrific event in our world history to happen for people to really to wake up to all this. But I really see some incredible benefits to it all. And between first of all, just the need for office space. I mean, do we really need to have? Do companies really need to have these giant office spaces? Renting 14,000 square feet of office space. Uh, People don't need to get in their cars as much. And what it's doing for the environment. What do you see the overall benefits to what we see happening right
I won't tag it to COVID, but I will tag it to the remote work lifestyle,
now? Hmm.
or the work from home lifestyle. But you you saw what happened to the canals in Venice. All of a sudden, all of the
Yeah.
wildlife came back. There have been staggering photos over the city of Los Angeles where smog is such a problem. And I was
Hmm.
born and raised in California. Smog was always a huge thing. I have family members who have asthma, and for the first time in a long time, they were able to breathe, even with a mask, but they were able to breathe.
Yeah.
And if you're able to reduce the environmental impact of your company, or why wouldn't you? It
Yeah.
just seems like a no-brainer, and there are so many other benefits to it. But in very few cases, I think, unfortunately, will an employee be able to sell an employer on, I want to work remotely because it's going to be better for the environment. You have to position it in a way like, how is it going to be better for the employer, and better for the employer's clients or
Yeah.
customers?
Yeah. So how do you think that these company owners, these corporations, and even small business will listen, or will we go back to the way it was?
I think that a lot of business owners are in a position to have to find uh, new savings. How do
Hmm.
you cut costs?
Yeah.
And in the marketing world, unfortunately, a lot of agencies, their budgets are being slashed. TV not really selling as much as it used to. Same thing for print,
Right.
right? I'm very fortunate
Yeah.
to be in search engine optimization, where like we saw some growth in that during COVID, and I think that we're going to continue to see growth in that particular industry for a very long time. But getting scrappy, how do you keep your business alive when you've got limited resources, you're not making the sales that you used to, maybe you've had to cut some staff, but moving forward when things rebound, do you go back to the office? Do you find that you were able to function well enough without it? Well, then that could be a huge cost savings over the course of a year. And
Hmm.
even if you have to budget in extra things, so for example, maybe you pay for somebody's co-working membership, or maybe you have company retreats or get-togethers a couple times a year, that still is much, much, much less than the cost of having a traditional office space, furniture, dealing with all of the maintenance costs, power, yeah, all of that, right? Uh, so that is a huge cost savings that I think a lot of businesses are going to be looking at. But unfortunately, I think they're also going to be looking at um, what positions can we continue to do without? Where can we find efficiencies in maybe combining jobs, or where can we upgrade our tech to where where can we upgrade our tech so we don't have to pay the salaries is
Yeah.
going to be, the robots are coming to take our jobs, you know?
Yeah,
And
especially manufacturing jobs, that's for sure.
for sure. And so if your listeners are concerned about that, then start planning for that now. Start developing online marketing skills, for example, not that difficult to pick up. Especially if you come from any kind of communications
That's
background.
right.
I don't even have a college degree. I'm on team dropout. It doesn't matter. What matters is, are you able to deliver results? Are you able to consistently show results? Are those results replicable? Do you have a process for that? And then you're able to kind of write your own ticket.
Yeah.
A lot of what I have to say and a lot of my opinions overlap greatly with your previous guest. I thought that was a great interview, and I was just like cheerleading what he had to say.
Yeah. Well, and I think that it is, the future that we are going to be seeing that. And especially for folks, no matter what your age, I will say, because I think there was a perception that people that were over 50, like me, I'm over 60, that we wouldn't be able to adapt to this new world of technology. Well, uh, we are. We're doing just fine. And I'm keeping up. And, even though we weren't born with a keyboard in our hands, we've had to adapt, and I think it's opened up a whole new window for people who are of a certain age, men of a certain age, and people, that and women that you can have this whole new career, work from home, which is very comfortable, and you can live anywhere you want in the world.
Mhm.
Where do you see, after having what we've just been talking about? It may take some of these companies a while to really catch on to it, but what do you see the office of the future looking like?
If we could just pause for just 1 second, because I want to go back to, you scratched a little bit on ageism in the
Yeah,
workplace. And again, I think that that's something that remote work really, who knows how old you are?
yeah,
When you're passing all of my tests, I have a very rigorous application process. You have
hmm,
to submit, I pay for it all, right? I pay for your time, but you have to submit like 3 blog posts and do a bunch of other work for me before I hire you. I
hmm,
specifically do not do video calls until like phase 2, phase 3 in the hiring process, because at that point I pretty much already know that I'm going to hire you.
yeah,
And I want to make sure that you've got your background set and that I can put you on a client call and you're good to go. But in a lot of cases, I've been hired. I've half of my client load has no idea what I look like other than my avatar on LinkedIn, my little LinkedIn profile photo. We've never video chatted. We've never met in person. If like ageism is something that your listeners are experiencing, shifting to online work kind of solves that problem in a
yeah,
lot of ways.
yeah. No, I mean, and that's the way it should be. It should be based on
It
your
could
work,
be, yeah,
right?
absolutely, because it's terrible, and we do have a lot of employers have kind of like unknown biases for women of a certain age on both ends of the spectrum.
Yeah,
Some employers won't hire ladies who, might have a kid in the next couple years. They're never going to tell you that's the reason that they're
hmm,
not hiring you, but again, in my experience, having worked in this industry for the last 15 years and then owned my own agency for the last 10, I see ageism, sexism, and racism a lot less
yeah,
in this work environment
yeah.
than I
It's a
have
great
in any other
equalizer.
that I've ever participated in.
Yeah. No, that's really true. And I mean, it's awesome. And it's an equal opportunity for anybody who can get online and has those talents, and they will be rewarded. Um,
Workplace
you
of the future, what does it look like, right? That was the
Yeah,
last question.
yeah,
Uh, I think that it's going to be more of the same, or more of what you're seeing now.
more
Work
and
from
more.
home. I think that there are a lot of problems that need to be solved, and I think that there are holes in the market for these solutions. For example, we're seeing childcare and education. We got some problems over there. We got some holes to fill. I don't know who's responsible for filling them or how it's going to get done, but I know a lot of people are struggling with that right
Yeah,
now. I think that once some of those problems are solved, and on an ongoing like a long-term basis, once we find these long-term solutions, I think that the majority of people in the majority of positions will be either working from home or wherever.
yeah. Well, and you've taken it, I guess, to the extreme. In fact, folks, as we mentioned, as Carrie mentioned, she's in Amsterdam right now as we speak, and you've been all over the world. I don't know if it's for people that maybe live in a town or have a family and they're very established there. They can certainly take advantage of these great benefits, but really you can be anywhere in the world. And you talk about digital nomads. Uh, do you see a lot more of this where people will be able to just travel anywhere they want and find a place where they've got Wi-Fi and they're plugged in and they can work?
Yeah, well, I think a lot of people read the 4 Hour Work Week and got really inspired by
Yeah,
what Tim Ferriss said. Certainly that inspired me. Before
yeah,
I read the 4 Hour Work Week, I was already kind of like living it, not necessarily in the sense that I was only working 4 hours per week, but I was able to work from anywhere. I was a freelance writer. I traveled the country. I didn't get a passport until I was 30, but then you couldn't stop me,
uh,
you know?
that's great.
And I do think that more people are going to, once they see that they can work from anywhere, geographic arbitrage becomes a thing. When I
Yeah,
was living in Medellin, Colombia, I lived like a queen. I had the penthouse suite at a rooftop, like a rooftop pool. It was incredible,
yeah,
and it was less than it cost me to live in New Hampshire.
wow,
Um, and so when you start playing with things like that, the first key, I guess, is to unlock the door of being able to like untether your life from an office. And once you're able to untether your life from an office, then all kinds of opportunities open up themselves. Like, do you want to go take care of your sick mom for 6 months? Because you can do that now.
yeah,
I did that with my grandpa when he was dying. I just moved in with my grandpa or with my grandma and helped her through that process. And it was no big deal for me. I didn't have to really change too much about my work other than when I woke up in the morning, because now I was on the West Coast.
yeah,
Um, I think that there are, besides potential travel and whatnot, just the family benefits, just the lifestyle advantage in those 500 plus hours. Because in addition to the 500 hours, you save a lot of headspace.
yeah,
How many fender benders are you getting into on your commute? How many times do you stab your eye with that mascara wand when you're in a rush to get ready? How many times do you
yeah,
spill your coffee on your shirt? All of a
yeah,
sudden, it doesn't matter. Like, those things that add up to actually a lot more than 500 hours are just removed. And the clarity and flexibility that gave me, I'm such a fan of it that I've become a preacher for it.
yeah.
I'm evangelical for the work from home or wherever lifestyle.
Yeah, and you mentioned that episode that I did with Steve Larson, who wrote The Year Off. And, it really is amazing that, like what he talks about, I mean, really pursuing your passion. It allows you to do that if you're willing to take the risk. And, read your articles, folks, on the Content Factory website, some great articles there by Carrie about, passive income. And, all this it's not easy.
Yeah.
But think about what you do every day in your job. You get up and you work your tails off, and have probably for decades. And is it really what you wanted to do? When you're pursuing something that you really want, because I've been involved in television and production my entire career, and I don't envision retiring, but I'm ready to stop the grind of getting on TV daily. But I love to do these podcasts. I love to do videos. I started a YouTube channel that putting stuff up and seeing what works. But my focus is to get to that point where I can make that lucrative to the point where I can live. And like you said, I could be on a beach somewhere and do a podcast. I mean, the capability is there, and it's all if you're willing to take that shot. But you can keep that job that you have and then work towards these other things. But I think that more and more people with this opportunity, it's not like you have to come up with your life savings to try this, or it's very inexpensive. And do you think more and more people, and you must see it now, that are doing this?
Well, and to be clear, that wasn't my path into this either. I didn't just like save up enough money in my advertising job
Yeah.
at 22 and then,
What'd you say, $500 you started?
Yeah, no, I had
Yeah.
$500 to my name when I started this
Wow.
company. But what I did do was I started freelance writing on the side while I still had my advertising job. And I knew I wanted to get out of my advertising job. It was just like sucking my soul and I hated it.
Yeah, yeah. That's a good
And
sign that it's time to change.
yeah, it was, but it paid really well. And so I started applying for freelance writing work on Craigslist, and I actually have a guide to this. I outline my entire process, and this can be in the link dump that I send you for the show notes. But I've got if you Google how to hack Craigslist for remote work, I outline my process. And within 3 months, I had replaced my income from my advertising job, quit, and then started a website, continued the process. I landed major national accounts on Craigslist. I post my jobs on Craigslist. It's like good for more than used couches.
Yeah, that's good.
But there are other ways into it too, and that video kind of delves into it.
Yeah.
But it doesn't have to be an all or nothing thing. You can kind of dip your toe in the water and in the process figure out, is this really for me? Is this really how I want to live? When I started the workationing project and process in 2019, my best friend and colleague, Kelly Chase, and I, we packed, she was in Ohio, I was in New Hampshire. We packed all of our belongings into two separate, she was in Ohio again, I was in New Hampshire, 10 by 10 storage sheds. We met up in Puerto Rico, and we lived in a different country every month for a year.
Wow.
And we
Every
knocked out,
month?
yeah, every month sometimes we stayed more than that. It was 2 years. Like for example, we did 2 months in Medellin. We did like 2.5 in Montreal. So we ended up staying in Amsterdam. So we kind of hopped and jumped all over. But we knocked out bucket list items along the way too. So for me, what I found when I started this, I wasn't sure if I was going to like it. I wasn't sure if like being functionally homeless and traveling around living out of Airbnbs was going to be like as glamorous as I had imagined, and certainly there were a lot of struggles along the way, but turns out it was for me. I had like dipped my toe in those waters by taking 3 months to travel Europe while working the year before. There were other like long-term jaunts that I had done to make sure that number one, I could do that without sacrificing any kind of work quality. And number two, that I actually enjoyed it and it didn't stress me out. I liked it so much that it turned into, 2.5, 3 years of a podcast and continued adventures. And it works for me.
Yeah.
But I would encourage people who are making the transition. What I found as I was making this transition is I started critically evaluating every aspect of my life, not just my work life. What suited me, what did not suit me, what did I want to keep, what did I want to let go? And I find that I do this whenever I make any kind of major transition. I tend to evaluate everything, but go ahead and do that. And with a modern lens, do you actually need all of the crap that you have in your garage? Does it make you happy? Or is it just like more stuff to dust? I could go on, but I won't. I'm sure. I hope that your listeners understand what I'm saying in the sense that like this COVID situation, although terrible and
Yeah.
devastating, and there are opportunities to use this as a time of reflection and reevaluation and reoptimization of your life, not just career wise, but in all aspects.
Yeah.
You've got like a little bit of time to catch your breath, take an objective look around. Like, do you like what you see? If not, what do you want to change? And what are the next steps that you're post-its? What are the next steps that you're going to take to fix them?
Yeah, I mean, and that's true. That bottom line, why shouldn't you be happy? We've got it's a lot going on in the world these days, and then if you're just going to trudge through it and not be happy, is it really worth living that life? And there are so many options now, and as you said, it's not like you have to jump off the cliff. You can ease your
No.
way in, find out, how you like it. But I mean, it's really exciting. It really is. To me, I think that we're kind of on the another big change in how we communicate. I kind of look back in history, and when television replaced radio, and then we saw cable come in the '80s, which really revolutionized how we were entertained and communicated. And now I really think we're at another point where it is going to change dramatically, and you could be a part of it.
Yeah.
Carrie, I've really, really enjoyed this conversation. Folks, you should check out some of the episodes from her podcast. They're very entertaining. You and Kelly, I believe, you got that vibe together that's really funny, but you get a lot out of it, and you should check it out, the Workationing podcast. And how else can they connect with you, Carrie? Because I know you got a lot of resources, a lot on tools that people can use, and on more on this way of life.
Yeah. So one episode of the Workationing podcast that I would recommend is There Is No Spoon, Overcoming Mental Blocks. We get a lot into logical fallacies, the Dunning-Kruger effect. Like, maybe you are actually way more competent than you think you are. In fact, that's probably the case if you're a smart person, and then understanding those types of things can really help a person out. It certainly helped me get through my imposter syndrome.
Yeah.
To find me, you can check contentfac.com, CONTENTFAC as in cat.com. That's all of our social media handles. My name is Carrie Phillips. You can find me on LinkedIn, and I'll give all of this to you in the show notes.
Yeah. Yes, folks, you can find all that in our show notes. But really, this has been great. I'd love to have you back. I don't know where you'll be, but love to.
Turns out it doesn't matter at all.
Yes, I know. Well, I can't wait to find out where you'll be.
I would love that.
Yeah, folks, you can follow us on Twitter at Upside of 40. Also, Facebook. All you have to do is search Upside of 40 with Sean Mooney, and you can check out all the videos we have. You can see Carrie in person when we put this episode up, and a bunch of other episodes of the podcast, as well as a lot of videos. I've got some DIYs up there and a few other things. You can check that out on our YouTube channel, Upside of 40 with Sean Mooney. And if you listen to Apple Podcasts, please subscribe and give us a 5-star rating and review. Thanks for listening, everybody. Thank you, Carrie. And until next time, I'm Sean Mooney, and I am out.